Go! In this video, I'm thrilled to be driving a Mk2 Granada Ghia. After that Ford Falcon I tested, the XD, over in Australia, this is going to be a very interesting comparison. So this is the second generation of Granada. Despite the rather sharp 1970s styling, under the skin it is actually quite similar to the original Granada, the Mark 1, which came out in about 1972, I think. So yeah, a very stylish makeover. There's my Rover 75 sneaking into shot, and very, very similar to the Ford Falcon XD, but narrower and rather more sophisticated. We'll get to the sophistication in a moment, but we'll just take in the delightful styling. This was a hugely popular car for Ford. They sold many of them. I think over 500,000 of them in just a few years. It was in production from 1977 until 1985. This is a facelift version that came out in 1983, I think, or not, might have been 1981. Get me facts all muddled up. It's too early in the morning. But yeah, you got a different grille, you got different rear lights, ribbed for extra pleasure. This was very much becoming the styling sensation of the early 80s. Mercedes-Benz liked a rib light. The Mark III Escort, of course. We shall have a better look at them when we spin it around. Notice we've got a spoiler because performance version, and we've got alloy wheels. These aren't the metric ones, they were fitted to the fuel injected ones, so this confirms to us that this is a carburetor fed engine. Now with that enormous, very heavy bonnet lifted up out the way, we can now see the engine. This is the Cologne V6, the German V6 engine. Just to fill you in very briefly, Ford Europe had German and British operations, and they were building different cars and different engines. So Ford had the Essex V6 engine, a very heavy all-iron lump, while Ford developed its own V4 and V6 engines, the Cologne engines. Britain also had its own V4 engines. All very, very confusing, but the 70s was a time of rationalization, and all these cars were built in Germany for a start. The Mark 1s were built in Dagenham in Essex in the UK, or in Germany, and the rationalization meant that Ford went, why are we building the same car in two factories? So all these Mark 2s built in Germany, fitted with the German engines. There were still some spec differences. Early Mark 2s in Germany could have a V4 engine, but the four-cylinder engine for most was the Pinto engine, 1.6 in Europe, but minimum of 2 litre in the UK. The Cologne V6 in 2.3 litre, or as here 2.8 litre form. And then you'd also got a range of Peugeot diesels, initially 2 litre, then 2.1, and finally I think 2.5 diesel engine. Very, very underpowered, no turbo, proper sloggers. I've just noticed we've got the wiper mechanism on display over here. That's good to see. But yeah, a very punchy engine. Some alloy elements. Fuel injection was optional. I think these are about, in this trim with a carburetor, I think they're about 130 brake horse. I think it was 150 for the fuel injection. Look at this enormous screen washer bottle, because I thought these cars would be perfect for bombing up and down motorways. But we've got the plush Ghia here. You could get various specifications right down to a basic taxi model, which was complete stripped out. This one has a lovely V6 engine. Let's start her up, and you can appreciate the noise of the engine. And there we go. It's actually a, excuse the shadow, very quiet engine. Is that the throttle there? A very smooth, sophisticated engine, which is a reminder this is a fairly sophisticated car. We've got independent rear suspension by trailing arm. I forget what the front suspension is, but there are no struts, so I'm guessing it uses the double wishbone similar to the earlier Cortina. I would guess. But yeah, very stylish package. So I think we should probably have a look inside. Or do you want to look at the wiper linkage as much as I do? Let's give the screen wash a pull. Oh, look at that. All on show. Marvellous. Right, let's just stop distracting myself, get the bonnet down, have a look inside. Just before we head inside, I've just spun the car around so we can take in these gorgeous rear lamp clusters. Very, very stylish, very of their time. I love the fact we've got kind of overriders going on as well. And yeah, you weren't anyone in the 1980s unless you had a boot spoiler, preferably made out of some sort of rubbery plastic. But let's head inside and have a look at what delights are in offer in here. I love the trim, just for a start, and these remarkably comfortable seats, lovely bit of brown velour going on. I'm going to jump in and we can take in the marvellous dashboard. Now if we just compare to the Falcon for a moment, this is a lot more modern. It feels a lot more advanced. It was quite oldie worldy inside the XD Falcon, but because we're in a high-spec model, we've got switches and buttons all over the place. Got an electronic boot release down here, heated rear window, that's the light control, and the wiper stalk, indicators left, of course, for the UK market. On continental generally, we've got a horn here, not operating because I haven't got the key in the ignition. Yeah, two-tone horn, that sounds quite good. We've got a very, very retro alarm system, so these are sensors to sense movement inside the car. A slightly more modern head unit because the owner likes to use the car and likes to actually have some entertainment going on. We've got extra gauges again because of the higher spec. You wouldn't get these in all models. So we've got oil pressure, battery charge here, heater controls. So yeah, there's your marker there. We've got sliding controls here for the heater. Is that a digital clock as well? Oh yes, look at that. Does that dim when you put the lights on? Yes, it does. Look at that. So that's very 1980s. We got fog lights at the front as well as at the rear. We've got this control no longer working because of the modern head unit, but it allows you to change where the focal point of the stereo is. Ford fitted these a lot in the 1980s. The Sierra had it. Never really understood why. We've got a rev counter which goes all the way up to 7, but you'll see the red line starts just after 5,500 revs, so it's not a complete screamer of an engine. We've got a 3-speed automatic gearbox, no torque converter lockup, quite old school, makes old school noises. The electro window switches are down here. The handbrake, I'm actually going to apply it. Look at that for a rarity. A little glove box there, that's quite delicious. And a glove box under here with a twist knob. There we go. So I've got the original owner's manual in there, and a handy tea shelf, if you like, complete with another Ghia badge, just to remind you that you are travelling in a luxurious one. So I'm not sure it compares all that favourably with the proper, if you like, executive cars, but I think the sales figures speak for themselves, that people just love these cars and didn't feel they necessarily had to spend the extra to get a Jaguar or a BMW. And oh, some more space there. Oh look, a little Welsh dragon. Oh, lovely. And he's been to Haggotty's Festival of the Unexceptional, and I think that's apt. I mean, you might think that because Fords are so popular that they don't really deserve to be at an exceptional event, but because these cars were so numerous, they kind of got forgotten. And I think people go mad about Escorts and Cortinas, and Granadas, while the values are catching up now, I think they are one of those overlooked Fords. I'm not really sure why that is. We've got a manual sunroof, we've got spotlights up here, a bank of extra warning lights. So we've got low discs, screen wash, that looks like oil level, overheating, and yeah, we've also got the low fuel warning, and obligatory furry dice, the very, very 1980s accessory. I'm just surprised there aren't fog lights in the rear window as extra high level brake lights. But yeah, very comfortable, very spacious driving position Oh yeah, I think I could be very comfortable here. I've just noticed we've got control for adjusting the intermittent wipers as well as the dashboard illumination. No blanking switches here. Every switch is accounted for. Electric windows front and back, electric mirrors. We have got it all going on. So in terms of luxury, this is pretty good. And it's worth remembering, above the Ghia was the Ghia X. So that had even more luxury going on. I think they had cruise control and things like that. But yeah, very nice driving position. I look forward to taking this vehicle for a drive any moment now. But first, rear seats. Oh my goodness. This seat is so soft. I've just sunk into it. Oh, this is very comfortable. Head restraints, very unusual to have them in the rear in the 1980s. Fixed grab handles, electric windows, which don't work because I haven't left the ignition on. And we've got document storage here as well. And a brochure, which is nice to see. Friday night and 200 miles to drive. What better introduction to the 1982 Ford Granada. So there we go. We can see the suspension there. We can see the independent rear suspension, coil springs all round. Yeah, it's kind of a double wishbone setup, isn't it? Yeah. Softer springs, but the stabilizer bar is stiffer to maintain handling response. Variable rate springs were new across the range with the facelift. Oh, lovely. Ford gives you more. There we go. Heated front seats even. Wow. Oh, optional. And fuel econo lights. Amber and red lights on the speedometer show when you're using too much accelerator. Oh, there you go. Get you in all kinds of trouble. That's very nice. I do like a brochure. But yeah, it's very comfortable here. I can't easily get my feet under the seat in front. So it's not the most comfortable place I've ever sat. I've just noticed we've got lumbar adjustment on the front seats. And this lovely velour. But yeah, it's not bad at all. And I've got centre armrest as well. So it's, yeah, it's good. I've got reasonable headroom as well. I'm glad I got the head restraints though, because otherwise I think my head would go through the rear window. Just notice we've got little map lights. Oh, yeah, they're nice. So you can do some reading as you travel along. So yeah, it's certainly ticking the boxes in terms of comfort and splendour in here. Let's have a nose in the boot. Don't need to use the key, of course. I can just press the button. And there we go. The boot is released. Oh yeah, and that's not a bad size really. It's fairly shallow. And there's a fairly high lip to get over to get stuff in. But yeah, that's not too bad. I mean, you can tell it's going to be a bit shallow because just look at it. There's not much depth in the side of the car. So the Mark III Granada, which introduced a hatchback in 1985, was rather more practical. That is a little on the stingy side. I mean, imagine once you've got a couple of suitcases in there, it's going to feel very tight indeed. But I'll get you set up. We should go for a drive. Right, here we go then. Start the engine. And that is very, very smooth. Just twist you around so we can do a wiper test. There's my screen wash. Excellent overlap, no triangle of doom here. He has fitted aero blades and I don't like the look of them, but I can understand why people do, because they are better in so many ways. But I'll just reverse out this car park, get us on the road, and then we'll see how it drives. We're now ready to go, so I've got my foot on the brake. We're going to drive. The revs drop accordingly, and very responsive. It's into second. And we're into top gear at 30 miles an hour. So yeah, very, very lazy, but it actually feels quite perky. So maybe it's not too bad. Yeah, it feels very tight. This huge glass area means it's very easy to see what's going on. So excellent visibility, it's nice and peaceful. Oh yeah, this feels very nice, very smooth transmission. It's not quite as clunky as I expected. It makes a bit of a whiny noise in first gear because it is an old school gearbox, and a bit old hat against some rivals. More and more rivals were using a ZF gearbox, which we'll see in the later BMW 5 Series test. And with torque converter lockups, 4 speeds instead of 3, offering many benefits over these slightly older transmissions. But I have to say, it is very smooth so far, which is good. Very quiet indicator noise. Woo! I kind of miss that when transmissions used to do that. Let's take my foot off the brake and it will hold it in drive. That's a very smooth V6 engine under acceleration. I mean, you can barely hear it. And this feels pretty sophisticated. I'm slightly surprised because there's no getting away from it. This is your cut price luxury. It's trying to compete against Jaguars, BMWs, but there's no escaping the fact that this is your commoner's muck everyday car, really. Not all of them were this plush for a start. Granadas could be had in various specifications. You could get an estate as well. But they sold loads of them because not everyone wants the greater sophistication and greater complexity of a more advanced car. So I think what makes this car good is the fact that it is relatively simple, really. We're doing 2,500 revs at slightly over 50. Only slightly, and this feels very relaxing. I hope we can get into a 70 section so I can see what it feels like once you get a bit more of a shift on. Of course, this car would have been designed for German autobahns, be designed to go at a fair old lick, and that's where these 3-speed gearboxes do struggle. They can end up leaving the car feeling quite revvy. So the owner has had this car for some 17 years. It is your genuine barn find. And he says the interior is barely touched, whereas it's had a fair bit on the outside. Wings have been replaced because rust was creeping in, but he bought it at a time when these vehicles were absolutely worthless, really. £500 paid, can you believe it? But yeah, it's a lovely car now. It's only got a 5-digit odometer and it's on 4,000 at the moment, but we've no way of telling if that's first or second time round. The fact it did end up in a barn suggests it's probably more likely to have genuinely done very little in the way of mileage. So the Ford Granada rather easily dominated against the competition at the time. It was the best-selling executive car by some margin. It would have been fairly affordable, I imagine, against some of the more luxurious competition. I think companies like Vauxhall was then onto the Opel Senator A, and nice as those were, I drove the Vauxhall Rail quite recently. This feels a lot more taut. It just feels generally a lot better. I mean, it's always difficult when I do these tests because so much depends on the example of the car I'm testing, and not all of them are prime condition. But certainly this car feels absolutely lovely, very, very together. The ride, I can feel the odd jiggle here and there. It has got heavy-duty rear springs fitted, because if anyone remembers the 1980s, if you saw Granadas or Sierras having to tow, especially towing caravans, they would be dragging their backsides, and this car used to do a fair bit of towing, so the owner fitted slightly firmer springs. I can't say they're really destroying the ride though. It's still feeling pretty cosseting on this very smooth motorway surface. Of course, another mainstream rival that comes to mind is the Rover SD1, and I'm afraid to say that so far I think I'm preferring this. It's just that little bit smoother. Of course, the Rover SD1 offered a great deal more practicality with its giant lifting tailgate, but yeah, it just feels tighter, I think, and I prefer the driving position. You sit very low in an SD1, It really is like the 5-door Ferrari in terms of how you sit in it, and just the dashboard just seems neater. There's nothing particularly stylish about this interior, really. It's very of its time with all the fake wood, but it's just nicely designed. Everything's nicely laid out. This is more like it. Yeah, it's no ball of fire. It hasn't got that wall of torque of a Falcon with a much larger engine, but give it a rev and she picks up nicely. Maybe I'll settle while there's no one behind me for a slowing down, and we'll just try and test the overtaking power. So you're waiting for that gap, there's the gap. Yeah, that picks up pretty well. It sounds like we were doing loads of revs, but we got just over 4,000 into some twisties. Oh yeah, this feels very tight and planted. The firmer springs probably helped there because they're going to cancel out body roll. But yeah, this is a really likeable car. And yes, a Jaguar XJ has better ride quality. They are quite uncanny. But this era we'll be talking Series 3, and the Series 3 Jaguars actually feel quite cramped inside and quite dated. This feels a bit more cutting edge for the late 70s, early 80s. And yeah, I think I like it very much. We're doing 70 miles an hour now at 3,000 revs, which isn't the most relaxing, but is about equivalent to Vauxhall Vectra I owned recently, bizarrely. That's progress for you, I guess. Go! That's 60 up with minimal effort, and we're on the brakes to slow down again. Oh yeah. That was very enjoyable. So that was my drive in a Mk2 Granada Ghia. What a lovely, lovely car that was. A very nice example as well. So thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can head to the Hub Nut store and buy all manner of lovely goodies, mugs, stickers, t-shirts, etc. I look forward to seeing you in a future video where I'll be driving something else. Farewell. I don't even know what manner of Ferrari that is, but it'd be interesting if you park these two cars in a supermarket shopping centre and ask people which one they like most. I reckon the Granada would probably get more interest, to be honest.